Welcome to Krakow. We're on the outskirts here by the river. I'm just here for the weekend. It's a Sunday at the moment. I've got my flight back home in like a few hours. I saw some of my Polish friends on the Saturday, on the Friday. But yeah, it's really nice. I just thought I'd take this day to sort of embrace the culture a bit more and actually make a video kind of reporting my thoughts on Poland as a UK tourist, comparing the two countries. So yeah, let's get into it. Just a disclaimer before we get into it, I want to just say this isn't a factual report about Poland itself. This is just my own personal anecdote of making two visits to the country. And obviously I can't make a full judgment on the country from just visiting one city, that being Krakow. So to make it a bit more fairer, I've kind of tried to compare it to the city of Manchester, which I'm a lot more familiar with myself. And obviously it is about the same size, similar population and that. So yeah, that's the sort of comparison I'll be making in this video. Magnificent how they've managed to hold that rock up with just sticks and twigs. That's crazy. So I'd say growing up during my childhood, I definitely did have some opinions and thoughts on the Polish culture. I lived in quite a predominant white British area of the UK, a place called Lincolnshire, and even though there's not many migrants there from the Middle East or Africa or India whilst I was growing up, there was still a decent amount of Polish migrants, especially if you go to the Boston area, Sleaford area of Lincolnshire. So I got a good idea of interacting with Polish people when I was throughout primary school. I'd say that in every class of 30 there'd be one, maybe two Polish students, and I tell you what, they assimilated quite well, to be fair. Obviously they were very different. People would have a giggle at the names from time to time because of how differently it was spelled. They definitely looked different, sounded different. I think I remember when I was in reception year 1, there was a Polish girl that was one of my classmates. She had shorter hair than me, studs for earrings at such a young age, and definitely the accent was definitely different. So yeah, that was one of the things that kind of stood out to me as well. And just if you think about it, when Poland entered the EU, and I think it was 2004, after that there were loads of migrants coming over to the UK to work, and obviously they were taking the low-end jobs, the sort of jobs that British people weren't wanting to do. So I noticed them working at car washes, or those Polish supermarkets and corner shops. So I guess that my opinion on them as such a young child was, that they're, even though that I'm working class, I still saw them as financially poorer than myself. If I still held those views today, I'd definitely be seen as some illogical racist. Also, could you bear with me with my hair? It's proper windy today by the sea, so I've had to bring the mic out. I think it's very important to set one thing straight. When you're a tourist going to a foreign country like Poland, and perhaps the most beautiful city there being Krakow, and you see all these historical, cultural landmarks, and it blows you away, and you think, oh wow, this is amazing, Poland's so safe, it's so beautiful. It's so easy to have a very biased outlook on the state of Poland. I'm sure that the Polish population face their own social and cultural, political problems that I wouldn't be able to understand as a tourist. But either way, when you think about the migration laws in the UK, for example, and you look at Poland and how strict their border control is, especially on the Belarusian border, and you see the homogenous religious Christian backbone that they've got, and you can just walk down the street and just know that this is a Polish guy. I feel like I'm really embracing the Polish culture here. There's none of this multiculturalism bullshit where everything doesn't even look British anymore. You walk down the street in Poland, you really feel like you're learning something from another person's culture. You feel like you're really experiencing something unique and different. Square just behind me last night at 9 o'clock or so, I think it was. I'll put some clips on now, but there was just loads of people, say about the age of 16 to 25. They're all dancing and having a good time, doing the conga, and there was just this random beatbox in the middle, and they're all just dancing to it. And I found that just a massive cultural shock, because to be honest with you, when you compare that to the UK, if you think about Manchester and the sort of nightlife you get there, it's absolutely completely different. If you know, think of Halloween in Manchester for nightlife, you know, everyone was just dancing so wholesomely. There wasn't really anyone that was like overly drunk. There was a few like people that couldn't walk, but there was no people that were like popping pills or anything like that. They were just having a good time. They were wearing clothing that was aligned with like the sort of temperature and the weather of the area. They didn't seem like overly like insecure about like what they were wearing or how they looked. Obviously, you know, if you bring that back to, you know, what Manchester nightlife is like, if you know, you know. Manchester and Krakow, it's a good two cities to compare, you know what I mean?
One of the main authors to Polish exams.
So before, I briefly touched on a bit about the sort of immigration status in Poland and what they think about it. And obviously with the Ukraine-Russia war going on for the past like 4 years, they've taken a lot of asylum seekers in from Ukraine. So, I mean, it's best to believe that obviously looking back at the history as well, when they were over like Soviet-Russia rule, that they are much sided with the Ukrainians. They see them as friends, they're culturally similar, etc, etc. However, I don't know if this is because my Polish mates that I met out there are quite right-leaning like myself, but they said that the Ukrainian refugees that have actually come to Krakow itself aren't actually assimilating properly, a little bit like how our asylum seekers aren't. They said that yeah, sure, they're working, but there was like this stereotype about like the taxi drivers in Krakow being like ignorant, idiotic drivers that don't really go against the traffic rules. One of my mates said that when he went to his school, he had some Ukrainian friends, but even though they could speak good Polish, they would always speak in Ukrainian or Russian and sort of form this like almost clique and not really want to be around the other like Polish students. I actually remember one occasion we went into the main square in the centre of the Krakow Old Town. Obviously, if you know Krakow and been before, you'll know that there's a massive market square, biggest in Europe, and there's a statue there. It's the same place where I saw all those like kids having a good rave in the evening. It's of a guy called Adam Mickiewicz. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Please let me know in the comments. And Adam Mickiewicz is kind of like a Polish William Wordsworth, bit of a poet. And yeah, it's a very famous guy in Poland. Lots of tourists come and, you know, take pictures of the statue and all of that. But when we went about midday, there was loads of like kids like climbing onto it. I mean, it was very easy to climb on. There's like steps up to it and everything. But obviously it's you know, it's like fenced off, so you know they clearly don't want people to go onto it. And my Polish friend, he was actually getting like quite agitated, quite frustrated. He saw him and he said, "Oh yeah, they're all Ukrainian and they're not respecting our culture." And I guess it's just the fact that he sort of knew or anticipated straight away that they seemed to be Ukrainian because they were climbing on the statue. I actually went back to the bronze sculpture a day later and I saw a few people sort of doing this like mini protesting. They had this like cardboard signs and posters. Basically, I couldn't translate it obviously, but I could get a good idea just from looking at the sign of what it basically said. But I translated it later and it basically said that we don't want Ukrainians to, you know, treat our Polish market square as their own. Like we don't want them, you know, taking the mick and climbing up on the statue and whatnot. And even though my Polish mates were sort of discussing it with me beforehand, it seemed that the older generation were the ones that were sort of spouting this rhetoric. And I did a bit of research a bit after the trip, and apparently in like 1943, in like the Soviet takeover of Poland during the war, I believe that in like a region called like Volhynia, I'll put like the spelling on the screen, Volhynia, there was something to do with like the Ukrainian insurgents army, like massacring and slaughtering like 10,000 Polish people or something. So I think there's still a bit of stigma, there's still a bit of context and backstory that going on in the background, and maybe there is a bit of friction between Poland and Ukraine that, you know, the media isn't really talking about. Now, if you were to ask the average Labour voter, lefty, liberal here in the UK, what are your thoughts on the Polish immigration laws, especially at the Polish-Belarusian border, they'll probably tell you, oh, it's absolutely inhumane, it goes against every human right under the sun, it's Nazism, it's fascism, all of that malarkey. But, you know, when you actually look at it and look behind the scenes, like they'll tell you this. I actually met with a Polish soldier that was serving in the military about a week prior when I first went to Poland back in June of last year, and he was telling me that basically one of the Polish soldiers got killed by a spear by one of the migrants trying to cross through the fence. And after that, he basically showed me the video and everything, and this was only like a week prior to me going, and it was going viral and everything. But they basically just changed like the whole laws so that they can basically just shoot people on sight. There's been allegations that the dictator of Belarus, I believe he's called Alexander Lukashenko, that he's actually been encouraging for migrants and refugees, quotation marks, from like North Africa, Middle East, like South Asia, to actually come up through Russia into Belarus and actually force themselves into Poland as a way of like weaponizing migration to basically destabilize the EU, destabilize Poland, and basically just have more political power over the whole of Europe. In principle, when you go and visit Poland and you go to the cities and the countryside and you see how radiant it is in just this beautiful different culture that they have, and you find out that it's down to just how strict and protective they are of their own nation. I mean, if you think of the past, like World War I, World War II, and probably centuries before as well, like they have been an oppressed nation that have been, you know, swallowed up by Germany, swallowed up by like Austria-Hungary, I believe, swallowed up by Soviet Russia. Like they really care about their identity, and that's something I really respect as a British person going through what our country's going through right now. And that's not to say that, you know, as an English person, I feel like, oh, I don't belong here. I feel alienated. No matter where you're from. I mean, I saw like in like the main like city centre, there was like Turkish restaurants, there was Indian restaurant, there was like an Argentinian restaurant, and there was an English pub as well, like an underground pub. Is it normal to have fish like this?
No.
Because we just deep fry everything.
What would you?
Last topic I'm going to speak about is going to really excite the passport bros out there. Big up. Because I remember when I first came to Poland and met my Polish mates, the first thing they would talk about was the fact that the British accent is apparently really attractive to like young Polish women. And apparently the reason they gave me when I asked why is because apparently it sounds really wealthy, it sounds professional, it sounds really gentlemanlike, which is obviously very nuanced, because if you think about me, I've got quite a Northern Midlands average accent. And think about other accents like Scouse and Geordie and Cockney and Brummie, they're very associated with working class. So I didn't really believe this to be a reason, and if it is the reason why, then it's definitely a complete misconception. Also, don't get me wrong as well, like I definitely did notice it quite frequently. Like I'd be on the tram, I'd be asking for directions, I'd be in a coffee house trying to order something, or the shop, or quite famously Żabka, very nice place to go, by the way, if you're visiting Poland. But yeah, like I'd find myself in conversations a lot more easily. It's a little bit flirtatious at times, but you know, it's still like half platonic, half flirtatious. You know, you're kind of just having fun with it. It is what it is. So I definitely do believe the stereotype that they were telling me. But one thing's for certain is that they do learn English in school. They are going to hear a lot of BBC British. They're going to hear a lot of received pronunciation when they're learning the language. So I think that it's quite polarizing for them to just meet a native English person as it is, because it's sort of hyped up when they're at school, they're hyped up to learn about it. So I guess it is a little bit familiarity bias that is really kicking in. I think it'd definitely be different if I was like French or German. There'd be a different stereotype to play involved, and you know, they'd still probably speak English as well anyway to communicate with each other. Also, I did a bit of research as well, and I felt instantly more prouder to be British when I saw it. Apparently, according to Babbel, which is like a language app, apparently 45% of their respondents said that the British accent is the most likeable accent in the world. Obviously, big up us Brits, Rule Britannia. They actually said that it was seen as sophisticated and very professional, a bit like what I said before about it sounding like you're rich and all of that. But I also saw another study by Babbel. I'll probably link it in the description as well, because you know, I want to make sure I'm right with this. Like I'm not just, you know, talking absolute waffle. But it said that apparently 73% of Poles have something called like accent anxiety, where they basically feel that their accent has like negative connotations, and they're quite afraid to speak with that accent when they're speaking English. And you really think about it, it kind of feels like that linguistically speaking, the Polish people are more likely to pedestalize the English accent. I mean, if you think about it, they don't just learn it in schools, like the pop culture as well that they're embracing, it's it's very anglicized, it's very American, it's very British. Like I was at this climbing wall with some of our Polish mates again, and there was music obviously playing in the background, and I think just about every song that they were playing, they must have played like 20-30 different songs, was that every single song was, you know, either British, mainly British, or American. I mean, if you're British like me, you'll know that recently a certain song in the charts in 2024 was really popular, a song called Kisses, and I kind of just see that as the most like average working class DJ song that you probably hear at a Manchester nightclub, for example. And they were playing that there, and I asked them, I was like, hang on, like, do you guys listen to this music on a daily basis, like British music? And yeah, they were really surprised that I thought that they wouldn't. Either way though, it's still definitely safe to say that the older generation, the people that grew up during the Soviet Union times, they would have learned Russia as their compulsory second language rather than English. So when I was interacting with people in like the 40s, 50s, 60s, like I asked a few guys like for directions, or if it's just like in a shop and that, they were quite reluctant to speak to me. They kind of like moved away quite rudely, and I can definitely understand that they definitely feel alienated from the sort of English culture that's kind of embraced Poland. Either way though, it's not like they held any sort of resentment. I mean, they weren't colonized by big up the British Empire, were they? So I think there definitely still is that mutual respect there. If anything, like there was times where it felt a bit too English, you know what I mean? Like when I was talking about the climbing wall, like I wanted to hear some like Polish beats. Like I've looked on Spotify for like Polish bangers. Like there's some good ones. They should be proud of their music a bit more, I tell you.